Charles Leclerc screams echo around the world. Carlos Sainz takes back Ferrari's strategy from the car. And there are two Mercedes on the podium.
Whoa.
What is this, 2021? G'day there, my name is James Baldwin and welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast. In this episode, we're reviewing the French Grand Prix. And I'm joined by my friend and yours, TJC, Thomas J. Camp.
Hello, mate.
The man himself. I'm well. How are you?
Good. It's just me and you lately. I like it. Where's he gone?
He's literally next door.
I know, he's a dud. He doesn't like you anymore.
He doesn't. He's filed all of you in the bin. That's his new segment is how can I put all of the audience in the bin?
He's the hardest working man in coffee, so.
That's a big, sure. It's a big call, but we'll go for it. Mm-hmm. In fact, if we take a video, I'll walk around after this with a video on socials and just see how much work he's doing. G'day, Pav.
You've arrived,
Pav,
mate.
welcome to the conversation.
Right. Cheers.
We are a dog-friendly podcast, to be fair. Pav, you might hear Pav a little bit later. This is just the joy of where we're recording. Campy, French Grand Prix, a mesmerising, not in a good way, but a mesmerising event, mainly for all the different coloured lines on the screen. It wasn't exactly the interesting race I was hoping for, but what are your overall thoughts of the weekend?
Well, I think I put on Discord that, look, the French get it wrong at every stage, but eventually history would prove they get on the right side of it and pull it together. And I actually thought this race wasn't too bad last night. That battle between Verstappen and Leclerc for the first, 20-odd laps or so, that was brilliant before that first pit stop. And I think we were really poised for a cracking race between those two. You could see what Red Bull was doing. They were just pressuring Ferrari to use their tyres, and I think Max had the pace from point one, but he was just waiting for the race to come to him, and I think it's the first time we've seen it. He's one of those guys that really makes decisive moves really quickly, but he seemed to play the long game last night, but I think it didn't end the way I wanted it to, but it was certainly a terrific watch.
Yeah, it's not as exciting as I thought as last year's race with the Verstappen-Hamilton overtake in the second last lap. Again, an additionally hard race to watch from a Daniel Ricciardo fan point of view, although it's getting better. McLaren are slightly getting better. This is a slightly new segment I've decided. This is Campy Bot's Discord comment of the race.
Of the race.
This is Campy.
What is the Campy Bot? Explain it to me, Jim.
No, you have
Not
to join.
Not even I know what it is.
You have to join Discord, our Discord server, to find out who Campy Bot is. Make sure you do that. You can join. The link to that is in the description below. The comment of the race, though, comes from Matty J. Russell v. Perez is the Aldi version of Hamilton versus Verstappen. Which is
very good.
Which is very good.
You know what Aldi is?
So there you go, Matty J.
What's Aldi? It's like the cheap supermarket.
Yeah. What's Aldi?
I've never been. I pay these people to pack my bags. That's why I don't freaking go there.
The content writes itself here for the stings that I need later. Outstanding. Look, well, that's that. Look, join our Discord server. Engage with us over there. You'll find at least one of us on there during a race weekend. Yeah. But Campy, before we get into talking about the race itself, with team-by-team analysis, before we talk about the flyover that didn't exist and the anthem, which was a bit average.
It's a French anthem. It was going to suck anyway. Surprised they finished it.
We've got a bit of an update for Lakeside Drive as a whole. Basically, you want more content, right? Well, you're going to get it. End update. No, it's a great thing. So what's going to happen is we're going to go on a little bit of a break after the next race review, which is Hungarian Grand Prix next Monday. We're going to go for a couple of weeks break, and then the week before Spa, so the 22nd of August, Tuesday, the 23rd of August, you will get our first episode. That will be the race preview with Tommy T, Campy, me, sitting in a studio somewhere in the beautiful north of Melbourne. The second you will get is Freya's Free Practice Fridays, which will come out Friday, funnily enough, for all of us to listen to. And that'll be focused on the news and events of the week and the press conferences that go on the Thursday. And then Campy's Corner, Campy's Qualifying Corner, Campy's Who's in the Bin Corner. Yeah. There's many things you can insert in the middle of Campy's Corner, which will come out straight after qualifying. For Australia, that'll be probably Sunday morning. Yep. Everywhere else in the world will be the times you know. But there'll be 3 different podcasts that we're producing each week the whole way through.
Yeah, and on an off week, we're just doing the one weekly podcast, which will be a team radio or something as well. Is that right?
We'll do it. We're doing 3.
Just cool.
Every week. 3 podcasts every week. It'll be look, he doesn't, we're working it as we're going along. But it's going to be slightly shorter format. So race reviews, previews will be around 45 minutes to an hour. Fryer and Campy's episodes will be around or just under half an hour. So just gives us a little bit more time to talk about everything else that's going on in the world of Formula One. And if you dislike Freya or you dislike Campy or you love Tommy T, you can pick and choose your podcast you want to listen to. So there's that. But also we're going to do a little bit more in the video space as well. We are looking for a freelance video editor. If you are one of those, you'd like to help support the show, get in touch, hello@lakesidedrive.com.au. There'll be dollars involved as well, but support the show in terms of helping us make some kick-ass content. That'd be great.
Get on.
So there you go. There's a little bit of an update for you all. We've been sort of working on that for the last couple of weeks. We're very glad that that's all coming together. So looking forward to that first episode, which will be a video podcast properly in a studio, as well as a audio podcast being released on the 23rd of August, which will be exciting. And one of those segments that I'm going to update, which I want to talk about now, is Campy's bin. There's going to be a good sting designed for that. And I want to know, Campy, who's currently in the bin?
Just Gasly.
Just Gasly. Okay.
Else?
But who's in the bin before this week? So Gasly, I've written down Gasly, McLaren, and Lance Stroll.
Yeah, McLaren's in it. Stroll's in it.
All of McLaren.
I took Massey out because I felt sorry for him, and we want to get him on the podcast.
Yeah. That's how it works.
Who else was in there? There was someone else in there at the stage.
The French.
Yeah, the French are all.
Yeah, good.
Look, no, French. I actually like them. They're good.
Okay, so
it's easy to rag on the French because
so
of World War II if you don't get it.
They are the people who are in Campy's bin currently. But who's in your bin specifically from this week?
Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear Lord, what is going on with that team? I said right at the end of our last podcast, they've arrived. They're in the top 2 car. They're fighting for a world championship. We need to change the parameters in which they're looking at them. And what do? Like it was almost prophesied from my mouth. They shit the bed so badly. Carlos Sainz on the podium and decided to pit him with 10 laps to go. And he made up what? Like
a handful of places.
Like when they pitted him from 3rd, he went back to 7th behind Norris,
He was
I believe.
behind DR.
Mind-bogglingly stupid, and he clawed his way back to 5th, and he was behind Russell and Perez by about 16 seconds. Even if his tyres were going to wear out and he was going to go at the end of the race, why on earth would you throw that away? Mind-bogglingly stupid.
Yeah. Well, as I said at the top, it seemed that Carlos Sainz had to take back Ferrari's strategy again to the car. He did that so many times last year. It just seems to be rubbish. I know, look, there was a delayed radio message where Crofty's like, why are they saying this to him while he's battling Perez? That wasn't when it happened. It was a good sort of 30 seconds prior to that point. But it was still quite stupid, I think, for that, where he's saying one thing, they're saying the other, and then they change their minds even after something else has happened. I just feel like that is incredibly Ferrari of Ferrari.
They haven't done it in a while. But, hey, first week, geez. What?
Do you know what they're very good at doing? Not finishing both cars in a Grand Prix.
Absolutely. Well,
because if it's not Carlos, it's Charles suffering from something, a mistake or an error.
I don't think the car is as good as the Red Bull in a season-long championship. But, I mean, how's Charles? We'll talk about the drivers when we get there.
Yeah. So in the bin, Ferrari and Pierre Gasly. And, well, I mean, he's part of the Ferrari thing. So Ferrari, Pierre Gasly in the bin. That's who's currently in Campy's bin. You'll probably find McLaren and Lance Stroll glued to the bottom of it as well. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about qualifying. Was there much in the way that surprised you for this weekend?
To be completely 100% transparent with you, I watched Q2. Danny Rick didn't make it in, and I didn't watch the rest. So I don't even know what happened to Sainz. Why didn't he set a time?
Well, he didn't need to because new engine passed the same with K-Mag. So he did to get ahead of K-Mag, but that was he started 19th K-Mag.
I thought he only had a 10-place grid penalty anyway.
It's right at the very. I mean, it's basically built the whole bloody new car, especially after
so he took
Austria. Think about the flame situation. Yes, so went 4 out of 3 allowed parts. Interesting that I think seeing Charles Leclerc being as strong as he is around here, it feels like he's not consistently the fastest at the moment. Can be a little bit track specific, but when he's on, mate, Charles Leclerc is on. He outqualified Verstappen and Perez. Then came Hamilton, Norris, which we could talk a little bit about McLaren a little bit, ahead of Russell, which was a great qualifying by Lando. The upgrades of that McLaren clearly working for him, not for DR. Tsunoda, Sainz, and Magnussen qualified 9th and 10th, but because of their grid penalties, Ricciardo then promoted to 9th. Ocon, and DR out-qualified Ocon, which is not a bad thing, talking in the Alpine McLaren fight that's going on right now. Bottas, interesting with Alfa Romeo. Bottas and Zhou didn't qualify well at all. Bottas 13th, Zhou 18th. Seb Vettel, then Alex Albon on 15th, Pierre Gasly, Lance Stroll, Zhou, Mick Schumacher, and Latifi. Kind of the qualifying order to me feels very last season. Like in terms of the where mixing everything else is towards each other. It's a shame that Mick Schumacher got knocked out so early on in Q1. I mean, track limits.
On a track like this where every second corner, everyone's whole car's off the corner. Like, that's the thing. How did we get this so right at Austria and then go to France where it's an open circuit and you could basically drive anywhere on the track and it not be tracked, like not get pinged for it? They get pulled up. It's just mind-bogglingly stupid again.
Yeah, but it wasn't like I think he should have been rewarded where he put in turn 3. That's inside corner next to Bollard. The fact that he fit his 17-meter wide Haas in that between the white line where that Bollard is should be applauded. Not
I can see why they deleted.
Oh, sure, but it's not. I mean. Anyway, I mean, the track limit is the track limit. We've been saying that for ages, but it was disappointing because Haas, with still no upgrades, still looking pretty solid.
Yep.
Kevin Magnussen just getting all of this amazing pace out of it. So it was an interesting qualifying in that it wasn't interesting. Sounds ridiculous to say. Kinky porpoising, anyone? Well, let's go through our team-by-team analysis. But before we do that, national anthem, no fly past, green jumpsuit, very traditional. People like singing the Brisbane Lions theme song.
That green jumpsuit was horrid, wasn't it?
It's an interesting colour.
I looked at my mate that I watched it with and just went, really? Is that what's
Campy's fashion advice, by the way, is a new segment coming to Lakeside Drive.
That's what you chose to wear when this broadcast is going out. Now, how many hundreds of millions of people throughout
you can find where to buy the best beanies, which is the same beanie, but only in olive green. Occasionally you can find a brand new one.
Anyway,
by your dad, who hands one to you.
We'll give. I'm a sucker for our anthem, but the French anthem just doesn't do it for me.
Give me a score out of 10, Campy.
I'll give it a 5.
5 out of 10. Half marks for the French. All right, team by team analysis. We're starting at the very back. Unfortunately, it's Haas, Kevin Magnussen, DNF, Mick Schumacher, 15th. Not exactly what I would have said it was indicative pace for them this weekend. Again, the qualifying was strong. K-Mag, although starting right at the very back of the pack, he jumps like 7 places in the first 5 corners.
Yep.
Incredible performance by him. He's very clearly comfortable enough with his car. Of course, as I said, no major upgrades brought at all this year. I think Gunther Steiner said they were looking at bringing it for Hungary, so next weekend. But really for them...
Oh, real shame their race strategy. They had Gunther on the live broadcast at one stage and... They just said, we got pace. Let's get them in clear air so we can see if we can jump these guys. And unfortunately, due to the safety car coming out, it just ruined their strategy. And they just got stuck at the back. And you get stuck with these back-marking cars and things happen. I mean, Mick had a tussle with, who did he spin out with later on in the race? I can't remember. And I think he had an issue with, that was Ocon and Tsunoda at the start. Look, a real just shame for them because they.
Oh, you're talking about Joe and Mick.
Yeah, Joe and Mick.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
Mick, but they're the things that happen when you're crawling from the back when they got strategy wrong. I like the strategy from Gunther. Hey, let's commit to this 2-stop because we don't know how it's going to work. I think that the lengthening of the pit straight this weekend made it 5 or 6 seconds slower down the pit than what it did last year, which enabled that a one-stop strategy to come to play. But I like it. They've got to try things, and they were looking at their first ever genuinely, 2 cars in the points for a long time, and I think that says a lot about Mick Schumacher in the last 3 to 4 races. I think Magnussen has had the better of him throughout this first half of the year, but Mick's had some quality performances, starting in Austria, really. And from there, and he's got something between the teeth, and he's found something in that car. And it's like he's just pushed to that next level, and we're seeing the fruition of it, which is good to see because we know, I've said before, Magnussen is bona fide. He jumped in on debut and got a podium with McLaren. Mick Schumacher for him is a good measuring stick.
Yeah.
And if Mick can do it against Magnussen, he'll be able to do it against 80% of the rest of the grid. And, it was excellent to see. Shame for them last night, but hey, as an org, it's way better than the last couple of years has been. So
it looks like they're really taking good steps forward. I mean, look, no upgrades, as I keep saying, but everything else seems to be working. Gunter seems to have settled the team down. They like the mechanics are happy. They understand what each other wants in terms of how they work with each other. Yeah, okay, Mick's getting a little like, get K-Mag out of the way. I'm faster than him, which he did last weekend. Yeah. That's not a bad thing. It's good to be having these kinds of points now in your second season in Formula One. But again, Mick and K-Mag are not direct competitors. Whilst they're teammates, K-Mag had left Formula One. His Formula One career was done up until the beginning of this year. In fact, he was still racing for Chip Ganassi when he got asked. So the fact that K-Mag is back, that's a good thing for him. He's happy that he's there. And I think from a legacy point of view, he'll be wanting to help Haas absolutely get further ahead and Mick in that seat too. Because let's not forget, when it comes to Ferrari junior drivers, of which Mick is one of them and is touted to be, who that next Ferrari driver, where does Carlos and where does Charles go? They're not exactly old. There's a long time to wait, potentially, for Mick Schumacher.
Mercedes have strong ties to Schumacher as well. So
anything can happen. My point is, though, from a Ferrari junior point of view, at the moment, there's a lot of space for him to go. So getting together with Haas and making them as good as they can possibly be is obviously a good thing for him.
Look at the history. Look at Yuki's second year in the sport this year. He's on par with Gasly. Good on him. So it should be. Give these guys a bit of time in the car over not just one season, but put them up against a decent driver and they'll learn a hell of a lot more than what he did last year. Mick had a ceiling last year because of his poor teammate.
Yep.
This year, it's been raised because the teammate's pushing him, man, beating him. And, how would you feel being a mechanic for that team? For the garbage they've put up with for the last 3 seasons. An absolute heartbreak. It must have been hard to fix some of those cars again because Mazepin's put it in the wall and Mick too, he put it in the wall plenty. Imagine now you're getting to the point of all their hard work is actually paying off. They get to a race win. They're genuinely points contenders at every race now. They've just got to put it together. As a mechanic and a person working in that team environment, you'd be all... as the tide rises, everyone's emotions and competitiveness gets up and there's a joy in the place. They'd be happy to be there and the results will come. So it's good. Yeah. And Gunther at the top, we love him.
It's good for Haas. Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas 14th, Joe having a DNF. Interesting for Alfa Romeo because they had some initial early season pace.
Yeah.
That Ferrari power unit. VB got some great performances. Joe got some great performances under his belt as well. But now... just not quite together, potentially a little bit track specific. I mean, look, in this instance, they on points, not on points, but on position, outqualified Haas. But Haas, for me, were faster over the race weekend than Alfa Romeo. Yep. What does Valtteri Bottas do here? I mean, he's obviously well outside of having the 2 Mercedes on a podium like we experienced this weekend for his own career. He's not really expecting a race win again, is he, do you think? Or maybe do you think he can bring Alfa Romeo back to life and Sauber with his Mercedes knowledge for the last couple of years?
I think the engine componentry is I think the engines are just too hard. Like, there's 5 teams you want to be in Formula One, and they are the 4 works teams and a McLaren. We haven't seen Williams do what they've done in yesteryear. So they're the 5 teams you want to be in. I'd almost take McLaren out of that because they're not a works team. They're an independent team, function on its own, but they're still getting supplied by somebody else. So, 5 or 4 teams you want to be in. Of the rest of the teams, Valtteri Bottas is by far the number 1 driver that represents those other 5 teams. And you could say Vettel is in there too, but he's the best of the rest. Will he get another shot in another championship-winning car? I don't think so, and it's a shame. I'd like him to because, how's that? Imagine getting to the end of your career and said, I had 5 chances or 4 chances. and I was up against the greatest of all time, results-wise, in a pretty dominating period. I mean, we know what the guy's a super capable driver. I put him in that, that top echelon of, in the top 5 drivers on the grid, but unfortunately he just doesn't have the car. I don't think he'll get there again. But he wants to race, and he'll be there for as long as probably Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah.
He's probably got another 4 years in the team, realistically, if he wants it.
Yeah. Well, look, we all love VB here. Joe, unfortunate with the spin around with Mick Schumacher and a couple of things. He ended up having a DNF as well.
That was juvenile by Joe, that. Mick gave him so much space around the outside, and I know the back end stepped out and he went into it, but it was a rookie error from Joe.
It was.
It's exactly the way you explain it.
But he's a rookie, so maybe we can forgive it in that
happen.
instance. That's true. Williams, Latifi DNF, hardly saw anything of Latifi on the coverage. Couldn't tell you what happened to him at all, apart from him being the GOAT, of course. And Alex Albon in 13th. The upgrades this Williams, not necessarily going maybe as well as they were hoping. I mean, everyone else is bringing upgrades too, right? So if you're bringing something that's worth, 7/10, for example, realistically you need to bring something that's worth 10, 15, 20 to frog jump everyone else that's doing the same thing. But for Albon, though, he's still performing, I think, as well as he can given the equipment.
Yeah.
Jos Capito would probably have wanted him a little bit further up the grid than this. But the upgrades, very Red Bull, and we'll talk about this in a second as well, but McLaren starting to get some side pods that are looking a little bit Red Bull. And as I said to you on a text message, in 2 years' time, all of the cars are going to look the same again, like we had at the end of the last set of regulations.
Oh, what's the Aston going to look like?
It's going to, who knows if it's going to be an Aston by that point. But Williams, it's kind of a shame because I was hoping a lot more for them. In terms of being able to get up there. Of course, at the end of last year, don't forget that the way that everything worked out, if you were right in the very back of the pack when it came to results, you got more time in a wind tunnel to design the car.
Clearly they didn't use that properly.
They didn't, which is disappointing, especially because they're updating their car halfway through the season. But it seems though they need something. They need some kind of magic, I don't know, solution person. I kind of thought Jos Capito would be that kind of person. But in saying that, and to be fair to Yost, Zach Brown, when he took over from McLaren, McLaren was shocking.
Yeah.
Way down the very back. Think about Paul Stoffel Van Dorn, who F2 champion, really good, phenomenal driver, wrong place, wrong time against a teammate in Fernando Alonso in really, really terrible equipment. Was never, ever able to show his true potential in Formula One. Yeah. Happens often, unfortunately. Excuse me, but looking at then what Williams are doing, do you think they're on the same trajectory as McLaren? In that really Yost only had the team for a year and he's turning things around. Alex Albon's there. Potentially Oscar Piastri's there next year.
Yep.
Are they making those sort of similar kind of timeline steps, do you think, to McLaren in 2 or 3 years' time? Do you think we'll see them up around that fourth position?
Hey, look, you could be right. I really don't follow Williams enough. Other than I think the Mercedes engine's probably hurt them this year. I think if they had this year's chassis in last year's series with that Mercedes engine, I think they'd probably be doing the things that the Haas's and the AlphaTauris were doing this year. That's what I expected, but it's tough with that Mercedes engine and straight line speed. It's huge for a team like that. Anyway, I don't watch a lot of them.
Well, to be fair, we can't.
We don't.
No one shows us. The TV director doesn't show us anyone.
It's funny watching practices. Sometimes they have these stonking laps in practices and they're P6 and 7. And it's like, geez, they got some pace, but it's never representative of what they're trying to do. I mean, you can follow practices and you can generally understand that P1 is for, race pace, long race, high fuel loads. P2 is they're setting up the car and finding the balance between the medium fuels and then they're trying to find a setup for qualifying. P3 is all about generally they've done their fuel loads, they know what tyre strategies they're doing, then setting the car up for qualifying, but then bringing it back so that it's good for races too. I can never follow what Williams is trying to do. It's like they do everything backwards.
Yeah.
Which, anyway, but we don't see enough of them on TV.
No. We want to see them back towards the front, in the similar way that McLaren and Ferrari have also struggled over the years as well. I mean, Ferrari obviously not to the extreme, but certainly McLaren. So it'd be good to see what happens in that respect. And if the upgrades are looking good for this year, potentially we might see a good result then for Oscar if he ends up in that Williams for next year alongside Alex Albon, which probably seems like the most likely thing. Or does it? AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, 12th. His home Grand Prix, Yuki Tsunoda had a DNF.
Yeah.
Another not so good weekend for Yuki. I mean, performance-wise, he's kind of up there. The AlphaTauri's brought some upgrades as well, Campy, for this weekend,
where did Yuki qualify?
Which meant that they were a little bit faster. Yuki was 8th.
Yeah, exactly.
And Gasly is 16th, so out-qualified Pierre Gasly.
There you go.
A long way.
That's happened a number of times this year. Again, I don't watch them religiously like I follow Danny Rick in the race and all I know where he's at and what's happening, blah, blah. But then again, some of these teams, I just don't care about the kid. But Yuki, he's in the right positions at the moment. Look at what that AlphaTauri was doing last year and some of the results they were getting. For me, Yuki's got this. This year, he's found a pace on top of what he had last year, and it's starting to come out. It's probably only come out in maybe 4 races so far this year, particularly in qualifying, where he just makes Gasly look second rate. Second rate's probably wrong, but gets him by at 3.5, 4 tenths, which makes you stand up and notice. But for Yuki to be in those positions on lap 1 says a lot about where he has come from and where he's going, and I think he's probably solidifying his spot in the series for probably the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we haven't heard about that second Red Bull seat yet. We know Yuri Vips isn't going to be sitting in it. So, I mean, it looks like, I think
what did Yuri Vips do, Jim?
He did no good things, which...
I don't even know what he did.
It was no good.
I just heard and I was like, whatever, I don't want to read this.
Yeah, they've just got to sort themselves out. I don't know why they feel like behaving like that as F2, F3, F1 drivers is acceptable. But anyway,
it's not the 90s anymore. You can't get away with it.
You can't be James Hunt. If you're looking at James Hunt as a role model, put yourself in the bin before you even start racing. It's not going to work. Yeah. But yeah, there's no one else except for maybe Liam Lawson. But he's getting there in terms of age. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I hate that I'm saying that because I hate this whole young driver thing. But and you look at the rest of the grid and you look at these other young drivers. You got Oscar Piastri, he's 22, sitting there waiting to go. And this is an interesting point, and I think it's something that I'm going to steal from Boxer Neutrals and Michael and I having this conversation about it. But I've never seen a driver who hasn't driven in a series at all. What are we now? The 25th of July. Oscar hasn't raced since last year, and his stocks are so high right now. Everyone's like, "Oh, Oscar Piastri, great driver." How do we know? Haven't seen him drive anything for ages. Yeah, okay, he's done a couple of Alpine tests. That's fine, but competitively, at least last year, Alex Albon was sent to DTM to do some competitive stuff. I think it's great for Oscar, but it's just very interesting to see the fact that the guy hasn't been in a competitive series since winning Formula 2. And you've got people like Jack Doohan coming through. And
Jack Doohan is...
What's Jack Doohan?
He is not Oscar Piastri.
Oh, no.
Oscar
no way.
He's genuinely as good as anything we've seen come through with results. I would put him up there. He's had better results than Max Verstappen did in his junior career. I think everybody knows that Oscar's going to be a bona fide superstar. And I mean, the comparisons to the Alain Prosts, really easy on the car, drives it super smooth, and he's deceptively fast. On track, some of those races last year, on track, it didn't look like he was so much quicker, and it didn't, even in some of the races, didn't feel like he was dominating, but he's just deceptively destroyed that field.
There's got to be something, we're not talking about Alpine yet, but there's got to be something in the fact that that they keep delaying his free practice showing. I wonder if he is just that much faster in the simulator than both Fernando and Esteban, that would almost be embarrassing to Alpine to say, well, this is how quick Oscar is compared to anyone else that we've got, but these guys have contracts.
All right. Given that's true, war game. How do we play this from an organisational role?
Move Esteban to the reserve driver seat and stick Oscar in the actual seat. You got him contracted as a driver for the next couple of years. In my mind, reserve driver still has driver in the title. I think from a point of view of performance, Fernando, I mean, the points would say that Esteban has outperformed Fernando. But race pace wise, looking at what's gone on,
Fernando's
dominated. You look at him in the wet in Canada. Oh my goodness,
Not
that
as much
qualifying performance. Oh,
Can I just say, Danny Rick made Ocon look like
sure.
a child driving a go-kart.
Yeah.
Fernando hasn't done that to Ocon.
No, but I think
he's been consistent.
He has been consistent, but also, so the point for me is, what is the long-term strategy for Alpine?
Yeah.
It's
not Alonso,
Oscar Piastri,
and
it's not Esteban Ocon.
Yeah.
So it's Oscar Piastri. So how does Otmar Safnauer grow Oscar Piastri into a world champion with Alpine as a works team to get them to out of what the options you've got, you choose the driver who's been there and done that before and gone, yes, admittedly, to almost every single team in Formula One and then outside of Formula One and the back again. But Fernando has the experience. Fernando's got the contacts. He's bringing some pretty decent sponsorship as well. Let's not forget. The only thing about Oscar is he doesn't have sponsorship. He's one of those odd drivers, the George Russells who, put a PowerPoint presentation together and go, look how fast I am. Oscar doesn't come from money. He's not coming from a racing family. His dad's got a really cool tuning company. Cool. But that's HP tuners. You've probably seen that on his overalls and his F2 and F3 car. But that's not enough to take it to the next level. Whereas Zhou Guanyu, all these other drivers, Nick Latifi and Lavazza, all that sort of other stuff comes through. So war game wise, if I'm Otmar, I'd say, right, well, if the seats are all up in the air for next year, I'd be trying to negotiate Esteban Ocon to Williams and open that seat up and put Piastri there. You got to invest in him right now. And considering Alpine's not a top 3 performing car and they're working towards getting there, you got to invest in the guy who's going to create the car that's going to be fast for you in 2 or 3 years' time.
The one chink in Alonso's armour, well, he's got a couple. It's public perception sometimes. And the way he plays he's been bad blood. He's very quick to flick that switch in a team.
Yes.
Be the bad egg. But the one rap on him as a racer is that he's never been able to develop a car. Look at the Ferraris.
That's
the
an interesting
McLarens
point,
when
isn't
he
it?
was there. Couldn't develop them. There is credence to the fact that when Alonso was with Ferrari, he wanted Webber to come across to Ferrari in 2012 and they offered him a contract. It never saw the light of day, but he wanted him because he knew Webber could do a car and could build a car. He'd done it with Red Bull. He'd done it with all the teams he'd been in and shown this real consistency. So with that hat on, I don't think Ocon can develop a car either, in my opinion. I just don't rate Ocon. After the year he had with Danny Rick, for me, it's how he got a contract the next year. No idea. It's mind-bogglingly dumb to me.
Toto Wolff is the answer.
Anyway, look, I'd almost go with Piastri in a P1 slot for the next 2 races and drive both cars and make both of them look stupid. And then it's a coin toss who you take moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. Let's talk then about Alpine. Alonso finishing
Alpine's
in 6th.
got to give Piastri a car that's gonna win him a world championship.
Well, and that's it, right?
And Renault's got form.
Where do they do? But where else does Piastri right now? Look, he's an Alpine driver, which is a works team driver.
Yep.
There's no customer teams with Alpine, no Renault engines in any other car. So it is this team. He's not going to go to McLaren because McLaren are Alpine's number 1 rival. They're not going to lend. Let's war game. Danny Rick gets replaced by, it was one of the rumors, gets replaced by Oscar, right? Why would Alpine let McLaren have someone who could potentially develop a car who's incredibly quick, then help one of their main rivals get faster? And, maybe he'd be absolute crap compared to Lando and we all are heavily underrating Lando Norris. That potentially could be a thing too. But on the what we know of Oscar, that would be silly. Send him to Williams. All right, but that's kind of like, all right, well, we're just going to put you in a car to keep you around for a year. That would mean Williams have 2 lone drivers in Alex Albon from Red Bull and also then Oscar from Alpine. But it still doesn't make sense because it's not like he's going to a team that he can learn something of how another organization who's actually doing a decent job is doing things to then bring back into the fold with Alpine. So for my mind, the very minimal amount that it is worth in of an opinion here, putting Esteban Ocon as a reserve driver or finding him another seat for next year is what Otmar needs to do to make sure Oscar can get in that car alongside Fernando. And look, it's Fernando for a year. And maybe that's the thing is Fernando, you get an extra year. Esteban, you're on the bench for a year. You've done it before. You can come back after that time. We're going to kick Fernando out. But Oscar, sponge off this guy.
Yeah.
Right, done.
He'll
Move
be
on.
doing that.
Already get it, but it different, I think, in a race-paced format. And then bring Esteban back, fine, whatever. But at the end of the day, there's no announcement for Williams, even though it's like, it's a done thing. Okay, classic F1 rumour mill kind of thing. McLaren, Mark Webber's looking at McLaren because he's mates with Andreas Seidel. Okay, Porsche connection, fine, but there's no legitimacy to that. And also it would cost an absolute fortune for McLaren to pay out Danny Rick. And Diaz said that he's not leaving. He's made that statement.
Yeah.
So where else do you put him? He can't not race next year. He can't, for Alpine, they can't not do that. So
I think Alpine want their cake and they're trying to eat it too.
Absolutely. They're trying to figure it out.
By letting Oscar go to Williams because it's seen as a good place for a first-year driver to go. Bollocks. Look at Lewis Hamilton, McLaren debut. Yes, there were things happened that season, but fighting for world championships.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you throw him in the car straight away. Show him some loyalty now. Don't put him off on loan because at some stage, Oscar's going to go, you guys have promised me the world and not delivered because you've wanted this guy and this guy. And he's going to be on the open market, ready for anyone to snap him up. And in 2 or 3 years' time, if the likes of George Russell hasn't performed, Carlos and Charles haven't performed, I mean, the lifespan of these guys' career in those top teams is only going to be 4 to 5 years max. In 3 years' time, they're going to be looking to who's coming up through, and Oscar, he's going to be the one. I would hate to see those top guys in your Georges, your Landos, your Charles, these guys to be in the top team for the next decade. That would just, for me, that's dumb and shouldn't happen. But that's what happens when you take kids so young.
Yeah.
But I think Oscar will rise. I mean, Red Bull and Max, they can keep Max for as long as they want.
Yeah. Do
the thing. That guy could he's the greatest driver of our generation. He's the next Alonso coming through or Hamilton, whoever you prefer. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting. Well, let's talk about Alpine in the race, should we?
Yeah, so Alonso finishing in 6th and Ocon finishing in 8th. Ocon, I think, took Daniel twice in the race, which was disappointing to see, but not really surprising then. Fernando really scrapping towards the front. For those first couple of laps, he's keeping tabs, but you can see the power disparity with this Renault power unit compared, especially to the Red Bull. It's like 8 or 9 kilometers an hour faster than the Ferrari, and the Ferrari is faster again than the Mercedes. It's faster or on par with Alpine. They need to work this out, Alpine, because it feels like they're having to shed some downforce because of the power unit discrepancies between Honda or Red Bull powertrains. And I'm sure they're working on that, which will obviously help it out. But as a package, though, 6th and 8th, okay, not bad. McLaren 7th and 9th. Okay, so, car for car, they're ahead again, Alpine. Do you think, though, that they're in the same trajectory? Talking about developing a car, we can kind of build this back into DR and McLaren as well. Building a car, the car last year, which was his DR's first year at McLaren, for Alpine, again, looked like a beluga, but performed pretty well, considering. It was there. Had some pace, it had some consistency, but of course Daniel would have been taken off the development off of it pretty quickly because he announced that he was going to McLaren before the season even started, right?
Yep.
So for that kind of thing to work, I think is really interesting. But let's talk about developing a car. So Fernando, you don't think?
Well, I'm not saying he doesn't, but that's the chink in that's the reputation that he's had.
Yeah, okay, so fair enough. So Alpine then 6th and 8th, McLaren, Norris finishing in 7th, DR finishing in 9th. DR was pretty racy away from the start, has to be said. It was really, really good.
Yep.
But these are the two teams that are in the big tussle at the moment. Because, Red Bull and Ferrari, but also Red Bull's power is phenomenal. Ferrari's consistency is woeful in terms of performance of the car. Alpine and McLaren keep seem to do this. It's Fernando or Orlando, pipping that sort of 6th, 7th position.
Ocon, Ricciardo. I think, that they're fighting for that 4th place in the championship, really. And I think the Alpine's the better car at the moment at this stage, particularly over the last, not the start. I mean, Lando got a lucky podium at the start of the year because things happen. And he banked some very good points early on. But I don't think they're going to bank those points for the rest of the year. I don't think the car's that good. It is a 7th to 10th place car every week. And the Alpines are better.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen that. Yeah. So it's interesting though, because
imagine if Danny was in that.
Well, and look, we can all wish, but so then my point is Lando and DR, let's say they can develop a car, because these upgrades this weekend compared to the performance in Austria and many races before that, this was a better showing for McLaren. And I wouldn't say that Le Castellet is similar to Australia, where they had a good showing and everyone's like, it's very track specific after 2 rubbish first races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. Do you think this is a slight turning point for McLaren where they've maybe found, because again, like it'll start, those side pods look very Red Bullish, especially in FP1 where DR was driving the upgrades and Lando wasn't. You could see the same photo. There's some great photos, I think, on the ESPN Instagram channel. Go and have a look, and they show the cars together and go, that looks like almost a papaya Red Bull in terms of the way that those side pods are starting to form. So if that's a development, they've got time and wind tunnel, all that sort of other stuff. My point is, potentially 2 drivers who can really develop a car well in Daniel and Lando. Maybe Lando's the better developer. Who knows? Is it going to flush out at the end of the year that McLaren actually having some pace, all of this nonsense talking about DR leaving and Lando being better and everything else, washing away as they, as a team, put some good performances in to then get that 4th spot back comfortably from Alpine?
I think fighting, I hear what you're saying. I think fighting for 4th spot is not where either of these teams want to be. So if we're looking at it from this year, and the disparaging the money might be $5 million. And at that level, how much they're spending, they don't care. These organisations don't care about. I mean, they do care about $5 million, but it's not where they want to be. So it doesn't really matter what happens this year. It's about next year and what happens to their pace next year. And I would suggest that McLaren's better placed, being a customer team of Mercedes, than Renault is at the moment, looking into the future, because I don't think Renault have ever really had this turbo hybrid. They haven't been able to do what they have done in previous generations of the sport, engine-wise. I mean, no one has compared to Mercedes, really, and Honda seem to have picked it up, and Ferrari got it together. The Renault's probably... This is the first year of this turbo hybrid era where the Renault's probably the best, the worst engine on the grid. But do you know what I'm trying to say? That's the way I'd be looking at it. But to answer your question, Alpine's got it this year.
Okay, good. Aston Martin.
Sorry.
Seb Vettel, 11th. Lance Stroll being very Lance Stroll. No Brad. No Dad, no Brad. Why is this race anyway? In 10th, last corner, right?
Yeah.
Last lap, last corner. Seb, you bet he's got that apex nailed. And then Lance, I don't know what he did, brake checked him, something, almost collecting him. It was no good.
I think it was clear Vettel had been given team orders because they thought Stroll had a chance at Danny Rick. He was within DRS for the sort of last 5 or 6 laps as soon as Ocon got past DR. And I think once they realised that Stroll wasn't going to do that, it was open slather for the two of them. All right, go for it. Unfortunately for Vettel, it was only 2 laps that he got a genuine crack at passing his teammate. And I can see why they did that as an organisation. Stroll did the right things throughout the race and qualifying to be in front of Vettel. I don't think that's indicative of the driver that Vettel is, but 4-time world champion, driving against Lance Stroll and getting beaten, you'd be smacking yourself in the forehead going, what happened to my career?
Yeah, well, Ferrari happened to his career like it happened to Fernando's career.
Yeah.
And Rubens Barrichello and Felipe Massa's career and pretty much everyone else who's driven for Ferrari.
Got to remember, this is the second car they put out this year.
Yeah.
They've only had 5 races in that car, and it's
It's performing
they're
marginally
still
better.
marginally better.
A 10th and 11th is...
They're still learning.
Yeah. But I still think, that was a real dodgy thing from Lance in the last corner. Seb had it, and I think he knew, and that's just absolutely no good. Who cares? Add it to the bin. Aston Martin in the bin with the teleprompter. Ferrari... Sainz finishing in 5th. We mentioned this a little bit earlier. Weird, full Italian strategy being all Ferrari. It was very bizarre.
Can we talk about Charles?
And Charles Leclerc. Now,
I don't think...
Yeah, go on. Hang on. Let me get my tinfoil beanie out.
Right.
Oh, no, I've left it in the car. Sorry.
Right. I don't think that was a driver mistake last night. I think we heard on the radio just before what's going on with my stuck throttle, the same issue that he's had that has reared its ugly head 2 or 3 times in the last 5 or 6 races. I think he said it, oh, no throttle, and then he couldn't, it was stuck, he had no control of it, and it was just too long that he held on for, and the back end spins out. It's exactly what happens when you get a stuck throttle.
Yeah.
The back end eventually sticks out, puts him into a wall, and you could hear the panting, and then he screamed, 10 seconds after.
Bit of heavy breathing going on. Reminded me of someone.
Jeez. Lots of heavy breathing tonight.
Good. That's for the Discord. You're welcome, everyone. And I said I would do it.
What?
Just Charles channeling you.
What? I'm a grunter.
And then screaming. Yeah, he was pissed. He was pissed.
I'm like a Viking.
I'm trying to move swiftly on. He was pissed, and I feel like the radio button. Either he didn't know the radio button was left on, whatever. Because normally you don't hear that. Although I remember Max Verstappen Silverstone radio from last year when, just after the impact with Hamilton spinning him around in whatever that was turn, that very sort of sickening stomach churning noise. He clearly was injured or winded or whatever.
Got to remember these microphones are right there for these guys, and they're not perfectly balanced like these. We've got filters around them, and they're not audio engineered, with gates and all that fun stuff, and get the decibel readings. And you can add some bass and some treble and some highs and mids, and they're right next to it. So I think the breathing is probably what he's normally breathing at anyway. That's my
probably
suggestion.
Degrading someone's whole job that is their whole thing is to audio mix the driver's microphone.
Give me a break.
So rude, Campy. No, but anyway, look, interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
I think it's right. Ferrari as a whole this weekend seemed very bizarre that just happened to Charles Leclerc because he said, oh yeah, afterwards look, I made a mistake. Well, hang on a second, that's not what it sounded like in the race.
So why did he say that?
There's a bit of finger wagging going from Mattia Binotto again after the race
why
finishing.
Did Binotto come out and say, it was driver error, but we still love him? Conspiracies. Tell us what you think on Discord.
Yeah, go on to Discord. Give us your best tinfoil conspiracy beanie thought on what happened with Charles Leclerc and that Ferrari.
I remember when things happened to Vettel and Ferrari, and Vettel would come out and say, I need to protect the team.
Yep.
That's
not anymore.
All Charles needs to come out and say, and we know what's happening.
Yep. Okay, so Mercedes, we're double podium. As I said at the beginning, what is this, 2021? Russell, 3rd. Hamilton, 2nd. Saw absolutely nothing of Lewis Hamilton the entire race. He was in no man's land. Okay, bye. Good luck. Have fun. And same almost for George, but there was towards the very end there a bit of a fight, wasn't there, with Sergio Perez he turned in on me. Well, no, George, he turned into the corner.
Yeah.
You have to do that. That's the point of having a corner.
You didn't turn into that corner at all.
Seriously.
You braked in a straight line and hit him.
Yeah. Anyway. He came in too shallow. Anyway, it's very, very bizarre shouting going on and everything else. Mercedes, though, they're not back, are they?
Hey, a Mercedes passed a Red Bull on track.
Yeah.
Look,
it's Sergio Perez, but yes.
Hey, it's not. They're not. The Mercs aren't passing Max Verstappen in a Red Bull. That's another level.
Yeah.
But I think this porpoising, the plank under the car, technicalities and ruling, have brought Mercedes right back into this championship. Lewis has got something to fight for.
He does.
I don't think they've got the pace. Yeah, I still overnight. 10 seconds he missed to Max, 6 seconds in the first 10. That's still 16 to, say, 20 seconds over a race. But there were times when that Merc was a hell of a lot quicker. Get on a track, it's tough to pass, like a
Hungara ring this weekend.
Put it together in qualifying. Hey, that conversation we had last week, if Ferrari keep making the mistakes they're having, Mercedes will beat them in the Constructors. I think the championship's out of there, but I think Mercedes in the second half of this season are poised to probably be the most dominant car. And we're talking...
Ooh.
No, sorry, the second
okay,
car.
Good.
There'll be Max Verstappen, there'll be the two Mercedes, and then there'll be Perez, in my opinion, for the second half of the season. I just think we need to sit back and go, what an organisation. The dominance they've had for 7 years, to be that far off this year and behind the 8 ball in 11 races. Yes, they've had some luck and some technicality rules come back. And what an organisation to pull it around in 6 months.
Yeah.
And make the gains they're making.
And only 44 points behind Ferrari.
That is
nothing.
If you had told me that after 2 races,
no way.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I think, what an organisation. Toto, they haven't missed anything. They've lost personnel. They've lost a hell of a lot of company IP about the engine and how they got it to, 50% thermal efficiency and the things they did. They lost all that. Other teams copied and bought up. I'm talking 11 race weekends, which is nothing in Formula One. It's half a season. They're back to being probably the second best car on the grid with 4 races now on the trot of absolute consistency. And for a double podium, I think Toto will be going right. 5 weeks ago, he said, oh, no, I still think we're in this championship and I still think we can get race wins. We're all going, geez, that's a bit pie in the sky. Calm down, Toto. You're not that good. But, hey, look at him now, 5 weeks later. Hey, all credit to him. Big kudos, claps.
Big kudos claps. I'll make a note of that. Yeah, look, I think you're right. In terms of where they're at, they said that France would be a strong race for them, and Toto was right. But again, all they need to do is have the consistency. Both cars finishing in top 5.
Yep.
Ferrari, the last couple of races, one of them has had an issue, and they haven't both finished. So that's the big issue with Mercedes being maybe slightly down on power, but their consistency is there in terms of reliability. And as Lewis said, I've got to praise the team for the reliability. Like, nothing's going wrong with the car. We're keeping everything within the limits in terms of what we are taking, no engine penalties, any of that sort of stuff in terms of replacing these parts. So I think it's interesting. Red Bull, Max Verstappen finishing in first. It's a shame that Charles Leclerc couldn't continue because they did have a good scrap, as you said earlier on. And Sergio Perez finishing in 4th after his scrap with George Russell.
Oh, what an idiot. I actually think he thought it was like a safety car restart.
Yeah, that was very bizarre, wasn't it? The
understand.
VSC. Yeah.
He wasn't that far in front of his Delta. Like that he had to brake and slow down that much. I actually think he thought, I think he completely messed it up and thought it was a safety car restart and he was controlling the pace.
Yep.
Until
he wasn't.
Until George flew past him.
Until a corner later.
Oh, you idiot.
Yeah. No, I think that was something that was going on there. But it's interesting now to see. I mean, Sergio's had some great confidence from Monaco.
Yep.
He's had some other good results through the year as well.
He's not Max Verstappen.
He's just doing it. He's not Max Verstappen, and he knows that.
Dumb question. Perez is number 2 or Danny Rick is number 1 in Red Bull? Sorry, let's rephrase this.
Yeah, please.
As a teammate to Max Verstappen, who would you prefer, DR or Perez?
DR.
Yeah. It's a dumb question, wasn't it?
It was a dumb question.
Sorry.
No, how dare you? No, it was because they're going to bring out the best of each other where, you look over your shoulder. In Azerbaijan, Max looks right over his shoulder and found that Daniel was underneath him. Context. Kinky porpoising? No more of that. Well, that's it. That's our team-by-team analysis. Thank you so much for listening to that.
A good chat. I feel like me and you, Jim. We're the smartest of our 5 of us on
Good. That's not my point at all. Everyone else who does this podcast. No, look, thanks so much for listening to that. It's going to be a slightly more condensed format as we do race reviews. As I said, we're looking forward to we're going to find some more segments and some new stings will come on. So if you got any show suggestions for segments you'd like to hear, let us know. Discord server is where you can do that in the show suggestions thread. But now, Campy, Fantasy team name. Oh my
really?
goodness! Pretty much all of you have had an absolute field day with this. It's quite a lengthy list.
Oh, really?
And I'm very impressed.
I haven't looked at any of these. I haven't looked at the notes.
That's unlike you. This is great. 156 of you in the fantasy league competition. Here we go. James's Kinky Porpoise, Byron H. Yep. You're getting very sleepy, Steen N, with all of those different coloured lines around the place. Warning, this track may cause seizures, Samuel R. Plan B for barrier, Dennis O. Biden's teleprompter. It's probably lost it. Aston Martin. Lando No Hope or Glory.
Good.
Carl L. Mum was a hamster and a dad smother of elderberries. Kelly W. Very good. Extra bonus points for Monty Python references. Charles Lecrash. Rory N. It's chowder. Say it right, Frenchie. Josh L. Very good, my man. Charles is a wannabe campy. Heavy breathing. LBS. Yes, very good.
Thanks, mate.
Blue
My
to
favourite
slow.
Canadian.
Red to stop. Combined for seizures. Jonathan C. I'm going to walk 500 miles of tarmac runoff. Daniel T. Kinky Porpoising is in here a couple of times. I just really bad use of the English language by me last time. Hashtag bring back Brundle. Yeah, Jane W. I agree.
Yeah.
Ferrari running around like a headless chook. Michael S. Plan E for escape. Nathan D.
Explode.
Zach Brown's IndyCar Empire. Matt J.
Yeah.
What are McLaren playing at? Dylan C. Good question. Campy wears a beret for his favourite GP. Nicholas H.
No.
And the retirement constructor award is going to Ferrari. Haley H. Very, very good.
Very good.
Top three. First is James's Kinky Porpoise. Byron H. from Australia, 2,348 points. Second, Yuki Cookie. Ken T. from the USA on 2,312
Oi.
points. And third, Leclerc goes off like a frog in a sock. Trent K. from Australia on 2,311 points. That is a lot further up than the five of us. Munus is first out of the five of us in 14th.
I don't
Tommy
have a
T.
team.
is second. You do have a team.
Bollocks.
In 55th. Well, there's someone else with your name then. Third is me in 83rd. Freya is fourth with 131st. You've got Team 1.
Seriously?
Thomas C. is what it's listed. It might not be you, but whoever it is 151st. It's way down the very bottom. Way down the very bottom.
Love that.
Well, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, we'll be having a little break after our Hungarian Grand Prix review episode, which is next week. The Hungarian Grand Prix coming up is happening this week, and it's one of our favourite tracks as we go into the summer break. It's very, very good. And then we'll be launching into 3 episodes per week. Don't forget, you can support the show by either grabbing some merchandise, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. That all helps too.
Leave some reviews.
Leave some
They're always
reviews,
good.
some ratings if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as well. And one thing I will leave you with is a slight change to the podcast as well, is that we may be having some advertising coming on board. So just
But it won't be crap advertising like insert ad here.
well, you don't know
It will
yet.
be
Might
me
be.
absolutely taking the piss out of this organisation.
Great, and then never getting sponsored again
Well,
by anyone.
that's what it's about, really.
Anyway, but to fund what will change into 3 podcasts a week, studio and everything else, we want to give you a heads up now before you start hearing that, but there will be ways of figuring out when the ads are coming and how to double tap a certain button that fast forwards you
We'll
to
figure
get
out
the
how
ad
to
but
make it fun and
that's going to happen.
engaging.
We're not being sponsored by Liquorland or Manscaped, I can tell you that. So no crossover with boxing.
No.
Anyway, it's time to end. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in a week's time for the Hungarian Grand Prix. RM jumper.
Oh, I don't know where they are.
What?
No, they're not.
I guarantee you if we went home right now, they're going to be hanging up in your wardrobe. Can you sort it out, mate?
Jeez.
You're never going to be sponsored by RM Williams if you can't
never
remember to
was,
bring your
seriously.
stuff. Wow.